Welcome back once more. This is Inside Politics here on KTN News. As the Kenyan economy continues to take a hit from the global effects of the coronavirus disease, pressure has been mounting on the government to institute measures to cushion ordinary Kenyans from the economic shockwaves. What options do policymakers have for an economic rebound in the country during and after the coronavirus pandemic? KTN's Moremi Mwangi looks at measures fronted by key policy experts and explains why Kenya has valuable economic lessons to pick from the current crisis as well as previous global pandemics.
With international passenger flights suspended effective midnight Wednesday, the export market already hurting, shopping constrained, restaurants and bars closed, and the shilling at a record low of between 107 and 109 against the US dollar. Kenya, a top sub-Saharan African economic powerhouse, you would say is like a wounded tiger, in a desperate need for a quick recovery to survive the deadly jungle that is the COVID-19 disease-instigated global economic shockwaves, now threatening to grind the country's ever-resilient economy to a halt.
We don't know how the size of the impact of the economic crisis or the economic impact. But from our perspective, we need to take, we should say, some measures to reduce the adverse effect.
But what options does Kenya have for economic rebound? And what recovery lessons can Kenya pick from previous global crises? World debate on the necessity of a stimulus and incentive package rooted on such measures as tax relief and alteration of personal loan repayment plans, as has been rolled out in other countries, are poised to occasion steep economic repercussions. The Institute of Certified Public Accountants, in a paid advert on national dailies, recommends a far more detailed roadmap, also roping in Kenya's major global bilateral trade and lending partners. Among these is for Kenya to seek moratorium on various external loans, such as the Chinese, a strategy under which Iceberg says Kenya would plead to delay repayment of due interest on the loan during the corona pandemic, and a further 6 months period. That cash, Iceberg says, should be pumped into the local ailing economy. Okay. But economist Professor Iraki cautions the President Uhuru Kenyatta administration might get it wrong should their economic focus singularly center on the formal sector, which Iraki argues is secondary to the informal sector, which according to the Kenya Bureau of Statistics accounts for 83% of employment locally. A massive population whose daily routine currently makes it not only most prone to infection with the virus, but also the subsequent economic hit.
So when you tell them to stay at home, not to go to work, I don't know what you're telling them. Because those people must go and look for work somewhere. If I'm a sophisticated investor, let's say I'm a stockbroker or or treasurer somewhere in a bank, I can work from home. But those people not work from home. They have to go looking for work. You cannot tell a Mjengo to find you at home, or you cannot build a Mjengo from home.
That's going to be a problem for all of us. So we do hope that, yes, you will take a hit, we will take a hit, but together we must protect the social fabric of our society, which is keeping our people gainfully employed and engaged.
Yet each crisis world over has to some degree of irony, historically proved an opportunity in waiting. The Spanish flu of between 1918 and 1920, for instance, challenged governments in the developed world to strengthen their public healthcare systems, the end result of which was a healthier workforce with a corresponding increase in industrial productivity. While the aid initiatives following the two devastating world wars, mainly the US-led Marshall Plan and the Soviet Union-sponsored Molotov Plan, birthed some of the country's present economic powerhouses in Europe and Asia, such as Germany and Japan. A bitter to accept lesson, Iraki says Kenyans can pick from the corona pandemic, which has spiked Kenya's technological focus through, among other strategies, the pressure to work from home and video conferencing. Tools of remote working, Iraki says, could be the masterstroke to decongesting major cities in the future and laying groundwork for local 24-hour economies.
because one of the easiest ways to sambasa, let me use that term, to sambasa coronavirus is through crowds. And one way to disperse crowds is to have 24-hour economy, so that we are never crowded in supermarkets, we are never crowded in workplaces, we are never crowded on the streets.
The Chinese, they say, use two strokes to write crises, one for danger and the other for opportunity. Yet that might be the master stroke to global economic recovery as the war on coronavirus continues. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
Thank you, Muremi. Mark, very quickly, the president in that report has said, you take a hit, I take a hit. Is that a fair remark, given the manner in which the Kenyan economy is fragmented?
Well, the truth of the matter is the government has to take a big hit in terms of how many taxes it collects. That's without doubt. Number two, the public will take a hit because of just the amount of money that's not flowing. People are hoarding more money. People are not spending as much as they should. But I must agree with, I think it's Iraqi who said that we must consider the informal sector. And this is where the rubber is really going to meet the road. When you talk about tax refunds, you talk about banks giving lower interest rates and things like that, that is unlikely to hit the local mama mboga, or is unlikely to hit the local juakali artisan. The question we have to ask ourselves is, number one, how do we give them alternative business during this period? And number two, how do we spur people buying from them the moment the period is over? This is what I mean. Number one, we need to do what every country that has succeeded through crisis has done, which is creating industries to meet the crisis. So, for example, all those people who make clothes and things like that, can they be repurposed and begin to make protective clothing for hospitals, begin to make face masks for people? That is one way of repurposing those industries. Secondly, we've got to talk about the 24-hour economy. If today the civil service was instructed to work in 3 shifts of 8 hours each, which will cover the entire 24 hours, what will happen? You know, not only the office is a third full, it also means the services are available throughout a certain period, which means people can go get these services at different times. And that is the kind of social engineering we need to have, not only for COVID, but we also need to make changes that we know we can stick on for a longer period of time. So we need to begin to develop a 24-hour economy so that Nairobi is not that congested, so that even if there is another virus that comes along, we will be able to survive it. But most importantly, we cannot continue to ignore the poor as we have for too long. Today, if this COVID-19 virus hits Kibra, they do not have the water to sanitize their hands. They do not have the infrastructure to social distance because their houses are not socially distanced. They do not have any hope at all of containing that infection. Let's just be very realistic. So what is the answer? How do we make poverty dignified? What I mean is, how can we give good housing for these people, which is one of the big 4 pillars? Have proper housing for these people so that even the spread of this disease can be curbed. The insulation of the rich against the poor now needs to be eroded, because if we do not erode it, guess what? There'll be an infection back and forth, and this disease is not going to choose based on how wealthy someone is. So this is the time, and I hope my president is listening to me when I tell him that it is time to re-engineer Kenyan society. It is not just time to respond to COVID-19, but it's time to re-engineer our society. Find out what can we make. For example, how many gas refilling centers do we have? Do we still have a monopoly on these cylinders, or has it been publicized now so that a lot more people can get into the business of refilling cylinders and therefore having enough oxygen in the hospitals? This is the time Kenya needs to relook at its industries and create jobs during the crisis that will sustain people during the crisis. And this is also the time where we need to sensitize our societies that, guess what, when the shutdown is over, don't buy things from China or America. Go to the shops and buy Kenyan. You know, look for a fundi to make your suit, to make your shirt, so that now we revitalize the economy. If we're all going to run to Woolworths after after this to celebrate, we'll have made a big mistake. If we are going to buy our beer from outside the country instead of Kerocho, we'll have made a mistake. And that's the change that is needed for us to survive this crisis.
Mark has spoken about the economic plans, spoken about creation of jobs, spoken about what the government needs to plan. But let's talk about the real things, and that is food at this time when people are staying at home and have a curfew from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. How much of that is affected? And Chero, I have seen some initiatives, especially online on WhatsApp groups, where some Kenyans are giving money or trying to raise money, kind of a fundraiser to buy food, basic things like food for various families across various places in this country. There's one you've been involved in. If you can just take us through how that is coming along.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to sincerely thank every Kenyan that has decided that they want to step out from wherever they sit in their homes, not through Cherotich, even on their own, to assist others who are in need. It doesn't matter whether it's 500 shillings or 30,000 shillings. You can make a difference. You know, somebody reached out to me on Twitter and said that he just wanted 150 shillings to be able to buy unga, not even boga, just unga for his family. And when I responded to this request and put it out as the basis for my discussion on social media around the need for humanity in a time of COVID-19, people responded. In about 2 days, we had about 140,000 shillings that I received through my personal M-Pesa that I dispatched to 53 families. And when I closed out the accounts yesterday with 9 shillings balance left in my M-Pesa, we had yet another outpouring. By this morning, at least another 16 families have been assisted, including a children's home. Kenyans, it is possible to be humane. Yes, our government has failed us and continues to fail us because, let me say, that we are not going to recover from corona, not just because we have a static economic situation, but we have a historical situation of graft and theft. So even as we, as Kenyans, step out, Kenyan to assist each other, please let us know that the problems did not start with us, but that does not stop us from stepping up. Let me tell you the types of people who have reached out to us, who we have been able to send cash to. Ben, let me correct it. It's not food. We're not buying food and commodities. We're simply saying, do you have an issue? Shika 2K, Shika 4K, Shika 8K. As quickly as it comes into my M-Pesa, it goes out because cash transfers are dignifying. They restore a sense in your own ability to provide for yourself and your family. We have chefs, we have salespeople, we have shoe sellers, we have house helps, we have mamafua, we have quarry workers, we have people who are in informal employment but their jobs, waiters, people who don't have work because of corona, just saying, my child is sick, I don't have food. Let us institute cash transfers. It's this business of, is it Pharisees who are going to demonstrate that we are giving this to the poor and make a big plan, have a strategic, and then 2 years later, we realize that billions of shillings that were meant to reach people who needed it did not reach people. So I'm a big proponent of cash transfers. Yes, goods and services and commodities to those who might not be able to go out. But if you give me 2,000 shillings, and I'm a mama somewhere in Kangemi, I will know how much oil I'm buying, how much salt I'm buying, and how I'm going to be able to make sure that my children can eat today and tomorrow. 2K will not solve your problems permanently, but it'll give you hope. Hope, as Dismas says often, is not a strategy, but hope is a space where you believe that things can get better. But please do not allow me to stop without saying, actually, that if we are going to recover from this corona crisis, economically speaking, we have very clear fixes that have been shared with us by luminaries such as Dr. Ndi, but the government is not picking these things up. Let me tell you that we have the capacity as Kenya to feed Europe. Europe will require food in the wake of the corona disaster, but we have cannibalized Kefis. Dr. Kimani has been fired. If we do not have a plant health inspectorate that can assure our 3 billion a year industry where we export our horticulture, we will not recover economically. We have billions of shillings for strategic grain reserves. For water, let's not even start on Aurora and Kimwarer dams where money has been stolen. We have money also we have money in place that is allocated for health, Ministry of Health. Why are we talking about counting the number of ICU beds that we have today, the numbers of ventilators, the numbers of masks? We are not talking about an event that happened yesterday. We're talking about systematic years of looting and plundering. Even that 1 trillion that was supposed to have come, no questions asked, back into the economy, came in hard currency, was recycled, and is gone again. Kenya is not poor. What we suffer from are thieves. And finally, President Uhuru Kenyatta, you're 100% out of touch with Kenyans. If you are taking a hit and I'm taking a hit, trust me, and Mama Mboga somewhere is taking a hit, or a boda rider is taking a hit, it's a very different proposition. And you must put the people that you purport to serve at the center of your emergency response.
Well said. Dismas, from what Cheroa said and what many other Kenyans are trying to do in being humane in this crisis, is that proof that the government can institute cash transfers and stimulus packages to the most vulnerable in our society?
Well, you know what Cherotich is doing is a confirmation that the Jubilee administration has been a successful failure in many aspects. The first time we heard about this virus was towards the end of last year. And we've got decision and policymakers who are public servants of rank who are paid to do sensitivity analysis, scenario analysis, and predict the future for Kenya. People are paid top to do the planning. So when they saw there was a crisis in China, did they do anything so that we are ready? You know, right now we've been caught off guard as if coronavirus is some sort of a fire, as if it's an emergency. But these public servants who are paid top dollar to do this, they were asleep on the job. Number two, during the time of a crisis, members of the National Assembly and Senate have absconded duty. They've gone back to their villages. They're taking selfies, doing musical productions, and complaining like the rest of us that government's idea, government's idea. There's an MP from Nairobi this morning who's come up with a long list on social media complaining on what the government is supposed to do. Now, one wonders whether this MP is alive to the fact that the legislature is the third arm of the National Assembly, third arm of government.
Yes.
He's an elected member of the National Assembly. Has he come up with a bill for presentation to the National Assembly? He's not done that. He wakes up one early morning and then he does a list, he complains like Murai is supposed to be doing in the village. Then you have these political leaders whose core competence is only talking about Kieleweke and Tanga. All these people want to become presidents in Kenya. Nobody, apart from Raila Odinga and Musalia Mudavadi, have come up to tell us what we are supposed to be doing. Raila Odinga, in fact, is talking about public health, but Musalia Mudavadi is talking about public health and economic interventions to take us to the next level. Now you would expect these people elected to the National Assembly, Senate, MCs, and governors, all of them to come and give us solutions. But what have they done? They just seated at home like the rest of Kenyans. They're waiting for the president to come up with their solutions. And the president is overwhelmed. Now, if we have to cushion the people that Chebet is raising resources for, we expected a progressive leadership today to meet with all millers and say, because ugali is our staple food in Kenya, Kenyans are taking a hit, not the same hit as President Kenyatta, because I'm not sure whether he takes ugali, but Mura takes ugali and Nafula takes ugali. How are we going to reduce the cost by, say, 50%? You know, having a meeting with millers. Then another thing that we need to consider reducing is the petroleum products. And you know, these are the issues that affect people who stay everywhere in Kenya. But you know, the idea, and of course, the electricity. But you see, this idea of saying that let's wait for the central bank to give us, direction. Okay. And the governor comes and he says, I'm reducing the interest rates from 8.25 to 7.25. I want to give employers money. But if you're giving employers money who have no business, what kind of incentive is that? We've not seen any tax holidays. And this is the reason that President Kenyatta needs to call people who are very sharp, who understand how to manage this crisis. Call Musalia Mudavadi, call Raila Odinga, call Dr. David Indi, even if you don't like him. Call people to assist you craft a strategy to get us out of this mess. You know, people who come with ideas. I mean, are you not surprised that the deputy president, who is normally vocal every Sunday, has not come up even to give us a policy? I don't know why he's missing action in all these briefings. Because whenever the president does a briefing, I have not seen him or the other ministers. But you know, all these people have been jumping around saying that 2022. I mean, what are they waiting for 2022? Why can't they come up with the solutions today? I mean, the billionaires we were talking about earlier on in Kenya, You've seen what is happening in South Africa. 3 billionaires have given an equivalent of 18 billion. But in Kenya, where are our billionaires? Where are our leaders to give us solutions? These MPs. And I think our lesson as we go forward, because it's a political show, is let's look at the leaders and their behavior today when we are taking a decision who is supposed to lead us in 2022. Let's not elect leaders with intellectual challenges. Who the only thing is to behave like clowns and, insult people.
We're taking notes, Dismas, and we will remind them here on this show when this pandemic is over. Kipchumba, very quickly, there was a letter that economist David Ndii wrote to the president, suggesting all manner of things that he thinks, can help study this country economically as we deal with the coronavirus pandemic. One of the things he talked about was a debt service moratorium in relation to external debts. We have talked about national debt in this country. Using the anecdote of one bird in hand being worth two in the bush, do you think that is a path we should be taking?
Ben, even before we go to what we call the public scholar, Ndii, I think the public should know our politicians for who they are. Our politicians are the people who are only interested with us as voters. Look at where they are now. Before the COVID-19 happened, they were all over this country buying crowds to attend to BBI meetings, having who has a bigger crowd between Kieleweke and Tangatanga. There was money to make merchandise for BBI. We were told there was money for a referendum. The question a Kenyan asks now is, where is this money? The 500 shillings they used to bribe people to attend to BBI rallies, where did it disappear to suddenly? Those are the questions we need to ask. The other question that we need to ask ourselves is, this patchwork and kitenge kind of economy will not survive. We can have a moratorium on our national debts, but what about the debts that people, normal Kenyans, have in KCB, Cooperative Bank, Equity? If we are getting a moratorium for national debts, then the central bank should levy also a moratorium on our local banks and circles so that we give everybody an ease. The other thing that we also need to focus as we talk about economy is, what about the rent? Nobody is talking to the people, to the landlords. Do they have an association? They need to get back a bit and give Kenyans some leeway so that we can pay the money, either to pay half of the rent we have been paying, or we spread it to the months after recovery. Is it not? The other aspect also, Ben, that we need to run away from. Whereas politicians taking a pay cut is a good idea, we must tell them as it is. That is public relations. We need to see members of parliament coming to parliament to pass a stimulus program so that can go to each Kenyan. If today the money we have saved from the Supreme Court, the president and the deputy taking a pay cut is around 5 million per month, what will that do? The other thing that we must learn economically from COVID-19 is that it is not, our leaders will not die if they do not go to Mombasa or Naivasha or Italy for benchmarking. They can do it with teleconferencing. They are doing it now because of their health. They can do it in future to save Kenyans from the money we lose. The other thing also we must learn, and we must look at coronavirus as a the silver lining of coronavirus, is that if we do not invest in our health sector, in a time of a pandemic like this, all of us are here to suffer. If you leave Turbo Health Center not well equipped, and we have such a pandemic, all of us are here, nobody's traveling outside, which I think is a good thing going forward. And the issue now of these selfie charities, the people who have been purporting to be giving people charities and what have you for the glam, we need to see them now. Ben, as a closing remark, we have had all manner of lotteries and these manner of gambling things. Now that Corona is here, why don't we get the money that people have been winning and we put it to help the poor as safety nets? We need to make sure that also our billionaires are accountable to a human cause. They cannot be just rich people for the sake of being rich. And finally, Ben, on our leaders, I cannot go to Twitter and meet my leader complaining there. I did not elect you to go and complain on Twitter. You are complaining and you have a salary. I am complaining and I am accessing Twitter through a Java Wi-Fi. We need to be serious as a people.
All right, thank you. A lot of things economically that apparently are not happening that need to happen. Of course, both houses of the Kenyan Parliament are in recess. We are keeping an eye on that for you. Let's take another quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll give you the chance to have a final say.